Hi, everybody, and away we go with another edition of the Stampede Wrestling Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, if anyone is out there listening, you are listening to tonight's episode of Hart Beat Radio. I am currently the host, Michael McCurdy. I am the host of ISW Radio Wednesday nights here on Blog Talk Radio. And at this point in time, I am being joined by none other than Bruce Hart. And we will be welcoming, I believe, Ivan Koloff, as well as a few other guests tonight.
I'm here.
Hello, Ivan. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we are being joined on Hart Beat Radio by the legendary Russian Bear, Ivan Koloff. Ivan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. How's everybody doing today?
I'm doing great, Ivan. Long-time admirer. I feel like I know you, if only through all the people I knew that knew you, you know, and I know my dad, and my dad was a big fan of yours way back in the 60s, I guess, when you were working with Sandor and Gene, and your old friend Dale Hay, later to be known as Buddy Roberts, came out to Calgary. I think you sent him out, and I believe there's another guy who I was told was your brother Jerry. I didn't know if that was real or not, but nice pair of guys. And my dad was very big fan of both of them, and I was happy to see Buddy later on became a pretty highly respected worker, you know, as one of the Freebirds, and before that, you know, he was doing the Hollywood Blondes thing with Jerry Brown, I guess, in Montreal back in the Grand Prix days or whatever. So, but yeah, I know they all spoke very well of you. I think that was, I think, even before you'd become Ivan Koloff, you know, you'd been working for Gene and Sandor and maybe Rod Fenton and that bunch in the late 66, 67, somewhere in there. Yeah,
I got Merv Unger's on live too to talk to you, so I'll let you guys.
Yeah. Merv Unger.
Okay.
Merv Unger. That's a familiar name. Is that shooter, Merv Unger? That same guy.
That's the one.
Yeah. How you doing, Merv?
Fantastic. I'm really glad to be able to talk to you again, because the last time we were able to talk was at the Cauliflower Alley Club, and that's, about a year and a half ago.
Yep, that's right. Yes, sir. Yep.
I think you and I have known each other probably longer than anybody else around in the business, because I was around when you first stepped the ring in Vancouver, and then later when I moved to Winnipeg, you were with the AWA at the time. So we've known each other for, I hate to say it, 50 years.
Oh, yeah. I can remember the trips not only in the Vancouver area down to Portland, Oregon, and up the BC area, Washington State, but my famous trip to Calgary and meeting the great Stu Hart and the family. And, oh, man, Buddy being with me, like you were saying earlier, and Buddy Roberts, and going on to Montreal after that, like a dream come true.
Yeah, I know my dad had a lot of respect for you. He was always, very happy to see that you had a lot of success after. He always seemed to take a lot of pride in that, and Buddy Roberts too, or Dale Hay. You know, he had another of your old cronies in maybe around that same time named Stan Stasiak, who also was sort of a WWWF champion for a short stretch there, and and another one was your other colleague Wayne Coleman, better known as Superstar Billy Graham. So he had all, he had all those guys in, and he took a lot of pride in kind of being able to help launch the careers of some of those guys. You know, quite a few of them were just getting their feet wet or just breaking in when my dad had them in, and he was happy to see a lot of them went on to some pretty high-level success. So, but
you know what really encouraged me about your dad, brother, was he ended up, I wrestled him one night, not right in Calgary, but one of the towns around there. And I remember it was like a 20-minute time limit. And I figured he was going to beat me up, you know, because he's known for his reputation, stretch you a little bit once in a while. And but he did. He went through the time limit, and I said, man, I didn't even get beat. It made me happy that I ended up, instead of getting beat one match, I ended up going through the time limit without getting whooped, you know. So after getting beat up for, you know, several years before that, every time I got in the ring, it was encouraging, for the say the least. And yeah, what he did for Buddy too, and yes, his Buddy was really green, Dale Hay, and he ended up putting under his arm and just including all of us out there, you know.
Yeah, there was a good bunch. Who were the guys when you were out in Vancouver at that stretch, Ivan? I remember some of the Eric Frolics and Jack Benson's and maybe old Dutch Savage. Was Dutch out there then?
Sandy Barr.
Don Leo, was Jonathan out there in those days? Or?
The McCurdy brothers, Don Leo, Jonathan, Tolis brothers, of course, Abdullah the Butcher and Rocky Johnson came in the last year I was there. That was a thrill.
Was Dean Higuchi out there then, or?
Dean Higuchi, I believe so. I know I met him later on. Not sure if I met him there, because a lot of the guys I had met in different territories, you know. But Dean strikes a mind there, and oh man, there's just so many great workers.
I can't remember if Gene was NWA champion around that time, so I don't know whether he was there that much or whether he was traveling a bit. Or
this was before time in the territory.
The last time I went in there, which was I was already in the WWWF, I had left because I had a trip to Japan, and I ended up having to check out. I thought what it was, pneumonia. But they weren't sure, so whenever I came back from Japan, I went to Fraser University, and they did what they called the special X-ray. It was like a figure-8 X-ray, and I guess now it'd be comparable to MRI, I suppose. But they diagnosed what I had, and up till then I wasn't sure if it was TB or what I had, you know. But they were saying all kinds of things. But I got to wrestle with partners with Gene during that summer that I was back from Japan and spending a couple months there, and that was a thrill. That Gene could go, man. He just seemed like he wanted to out-bump you or something in the ring. We had a contest, and one night I know it blew me up. It didn't blow the other guys up, because we're backdropping and slams and one right after the other. And that was one night I ended up going out of the ring, and I caught a fan as I was getting up, going to kick me in my backside, and I just did it perfect. I reached back and grabbed his leg just as he was kicking me, and I knocked him on his head, the guy. And I remember Gene saying, man, that's the way to handle those guys. But, yeah, what a great time. All those guys were the inspiration for me, you know, because they were so nice to the guys, from Eric Frolic, we have the McCurdy brothers, Tolis brothers. I mean, they would take time to tell us young guys, you know, what we're doing wrong, maybe do this and add to it. And it really, really helped a lot, you know, just the idea that such big stars took time for guys just starting off to help them out. And it was quite an experience, for sure.
Hi, this is Bob here. I've got Michael Elliott is on the online. Can I have him join in the?
Oh yeah,
Michael's making a movie of the great Ivan.
Yeah, so we're doing the life story of Ivan Koloff. We're doing a documentary format, kind of like WWE format. It's just Ivan telling his story, and then we talked to a lot of the guys from his career. Like he was saying, we've already talked to Bruno and Bill Apter and all the Mid-Atlantic guys, and we've interviewed Ivan. So we're just kind of piecing together his life story in a format that's not like a shoot interview where it's just the guy sitting there talking. It's music, it's pictures, it's video, it's a lot of different talking people in the it's a documentary format, and it's really well done. This will be the 6th project that I've done, and I've worked with Ivan think this will be the third time that me and Ivan have worked together, and now we're finally going to sit down and kind of tell his story in a way that, you know, somebody probably wouldn't have done it if we didn't come along and work together.
Yeah, I was certainly intrigued with, I was just doing a bit of biographical research. I was intrigued with, you know, how extensive Ivan's background is, you know, from, you know, he sort of transcends the two generations where he was back in the Bruno and the and Pedro days, and then he also was working later on extensively with guys like Dusty and the Road Warriors and Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson and a bunch of those guys who were of the 80s, 90s vintage, you know, and he was working main event with not too many guys that transcend those two generations and are working on top with so many guys that were from different backgrounds and were top workers and wherever they went. So I was quite impressed when I was just checking some of that out. Some of the guys that he worked with and some of the guys that he mentored are among the biggest stars of the last 20, 30 years, you know. So I was quite impressed with that.
Oh, yes, yeah. I mean, I look back at it there now, and I mean, coming from a humble background to having a dream at 8 years old to be a wrestler, and then it all coming true, and just the progress through the years from, you know, being beat up to and starting to learn some stuff and building my body up. And the one time I got up to like 305, and I guess it qualified me to wrestle some big names such as Giant Baba over in Japan, to Australia, to great talent, into I was over in Australia with King Curtis, a big Hawaiian guy.
Oh, yeah.
John Barofsky, buddy. And right down to coming back here and wrestling guys like Andre the Giant, and even back in the 60s with Haystack Calhoun in the 70s. And, man, it's just to stop and think of it there now, to end up getting matches against such not only big names, but big men. You know, it makes you think, like, what was it? I was out of my league there for some of those guys, but because I look back on it, I got some old videos, and whenever you look at guys like Bobo Brazil and guys like Wilbert Snyder and Dick the Bruiser, Crusher, and like yours mentioned, Dusty, and then up to date some more of the immediate talent in the last 20 years of the Road Warriors and Rock and Roll Express. Matter of fact, last night I was with the Rock and Roll Express, and little match they had here locally, Williamston. We do some stuff now with the church, like we more or less put matches on and give a couple of testimonies and end up tell the importance of having God in your life and the transition I took going through drugs and alcohol and all that. And, man, it's great to run into some old friends like that. If I have to do it, then a better atmosphere like church, and that's even better, you know. But, yeah, it's been quite a trip. And God says it's not over till the fat lady sings, so I understand she's bathing her throat right there now, so she's not over yet. So hopefully I'll get a few more years out of this.
I've had the pleasure of crossing paths with a lot of those guys, Ivan, and I've never heard anyone say anything but nice things about you, which is usually the best testimony of a guy being a really decent guy. But in the wrestling business, everybody's half knocking everybody else, you know. But as far back as Dale Hay, and then later on, I knew all those guys, King Curtis and Hawk and Animal, and a bunch, but they all spoke very reverentially, very highly of you, you know, in and out of the ring, you know. So I've never heard anyone say anything but good things about you. So,
well, I tried not to get my mouth too big that I couldn't back it up, you know. But I know a few times I had to get down to the point of saying, you know, if it came right down to it, I'm going to bleed all over you, so you might as well loosen up with me, because that was. I guess the truth is being conveyed whenever I was in that sense, you know, whether drinking or was the drugs or whatever, but I never considered myself a tough guy. But I guess when the time came down to it, I was under those crazy influences and stuff over the years, fighting in bars and airplanes and all this during my career. I just look back at it and I said, man, I'm just lucky the guys liked me. If it wasn't for that, I would have been really beat up. So I really never made any real bad enemies, I guess, like you're saying, and I really appreciate that. Or else I'd really be recovering nowadays.
How long did you work for Vince Sr. there, Ivan? That was, you had a few-year run back in... Maybe you could tell us a bit about some of your WWE when you went in there and how that all evolved.
I ended up, the first time I went in was from Montreal. I went into Montreal when I changed over from Red McNulty to Ivan Koloff, and Montreal I became Canadian champion and tag team champion a couple times, and ended up
were you doing
the
you were doing the Russian thing in Montreal before you went to New York, or?
Yes, sir. Yeah. For about 2 years, 2.5 years. Yeah.
Was that with who was that? Johnny Rougeau, or was that?
Yeah, Johnny Rougeau, Jack Britton with the promoters, and Jacques Rougeau is the one I met in Japan. My trip over there before I went to Montreal, and that's where I met Jacques Rougeau, the promoter's brother, Johnny Rougeau's brother, and we became friends. And he said that one day to me, he says, "Why don't you come into Montreal and wrestle? You make a good Russian, because I was about 300 pounds and pretty stocky, and I still fly around that ring pretty good." So I took him up on it. I said, "Yes, sir." And ended up finding myself there, but doing well enough there that got noticed in New York, and in '69 they brought me in to wrestle Bruno. I had wrestled him once before. He don't even remember it today, Bruno, when I talked to him about it, but when in '63, when I graduated the wrestling school, about '63, I went down to Pittsburgh, and as Red McNulty, I wrestled him on TV down there, and I got beat up like in the 5 minutes or something, but just to come back 8 years later and wrestle him again in 1969 and not winning the belt, leaving after about 8-10 months, and having a trip to Japan, not Japan, but Australia, and over there about 10 weeks, and get the call to come back and wrestle Bruno again, and ended up winning the belt, losing the belt, that thing, but that really made my career. What a thrill that was to be able to, because Bruno was my hero, and all these years.
A lot of people, I think a lot of people don't realize how big a star he was at that time, but he'd been the champion for about 8 or 9 years straight. So it was like, it's not like today where they have guys who are 40 times champions and all that stuff. Bruno had held the belt for, I think, since he beat Buddy Rogers in like 62 or something like that. So that was a huge story. I remember back at 71, I think it was, and I remember hearing about that. Like, wow, who are some of the guys in that territory? A lot of huge names at that time, I imagine, in WWWF, I guess it was called then.
Oh yes, yeah. They had George the Animal Steel, of course, Gorilla Monsoon was up there, Jay Strongboat, man, those guys from Greece. What was his name now? Adrian, not Adrian Adonis, but it was another Adrian. Anyway, he was from Greece. It was a home.
Spiros Arion, yeah.
Spiros Arion, that's right. You got but I could see his face, but I couldn't come up with the name. And I mean, just some great wrestlers. Later on, of course, Don Morocco came up there. Jimmy Stookton, all those guys were there. But back at that time, Captain Lou was still wrestling. Here, and Tony Altamore is a Sicilian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And,
was Freddie Blassie was he in there around that time, or was he still in the West Coast then? Or?
He was still in the West Coast back then. And but I got to meet him later. He even managed me when I was there with against Backlund later on in the years. But what an experience that was with Bruno. Just whenever you're in a place and it's famous anyway for Madison Square Gardens and the Big Apple, New York, and then to be against such a famous guy. Man,
that was like the ultimate. That was like the Mecca, Madison Square Garden,
Oh yeah, they even piping it in by cable later to Los Angeles. Mrs. Eaton out there, I guess it'd sell up the gardens here, and they'd also fill up the place out there. And that was the first start of, I guess, pay-per-views and all that stuff, the cable type thing. But man, that night was just awesome. Just the idea of the people reacting in such a way that, and I knew what was happening. It felt like any minute there was going to be a riot, because I'd been in a couple of riots in Montreal. Matter of fact, one of the famous riots I was in was Bernie the Cat Ladd and myself against the Rugos for the tag belts, and they filled the ring up with chairs. The people did, because it looked like we were going to beat them for the belts. And so it's just that same feeling this night against Bruno Sammartino. Just everything was so quiet, and they couldn't believe that I, with the 1, 2, 3 of Bruno. And matter of fact, I stuck my head up there after that. I went back to the dressing room. They just raised my hand, told me to get out of there, and people were crying when I stuck my head out and saying, "You'll always be our champion. Well, you'll get it back." And indeed, he did get it back later on, but just for the people to be into him so much like that they feel that way to me. For just a couple of seconds there, I felt like a louse, beating up my own hero, but it didn't last too long.
Was that old Toots Mont still around in those days? He had, I know my dad knew Toots and old Angelo Saboldi, and some of those guys were around, I think even before Vince, right around the time when Vince Sr. came in. And was Vince Jr. around in those days too, or was he?
Yes, he was there. Yeah, he was the commentator back then. When I first went in '69, yeah, that's about the time he started, I guess, with his dad, and he was real good for an announcer too, because he was so tall, so big of a guy, that he was smart. What he'd do is sit on the ring, but you stood up, make you look bigger and everything. Little secrets like that. But he was a good commentator as far as get the point across about the guys, the stars. He knew what his job was, and he was right up until just about all the time I was there. He was there with his dad and learned the business, I guess, and took it over right around that time whenever I left that after wrestling Backlund. I should have stayed for a while there because I didn't realize it, but they wanted me to stay. But I was so beat up from the trip over to the Middle East, and I had knee problems and shoulder problems and back, over the many years of being on the road steady. And that when they asked me to stay, I said, I got to go get this surgery done on my knee. And I found out later that I would have been able to be champion twice, but because I guess I had me figured in for something else, but I didn't even wait for them to explain it to me. I knew I had to get some work done on the body, but just some great talent around there, and just an experience in the least. Yeah.
Was that old Ernie Roth, the Grand Wizard? He had been our TV commentator up here in the '60s for a few years, and my dad sent him down there. He became like a heel manager. Was he around in that stretch too, or?
A little later on, Mort says that not right off the bat, but a little later on he was there. Yeah, I remember him coming in. I can't remember the first guys that he managed. I was trying to remember that, but whether it was Black Jacks or what it was, but I remember he became a big star. I know that, and he was really good.
I guess Captain Lou was he wasn't a manager yet then. He was just working, I guess.
Well, working. He took me on after my first manager, Tony Angelo, came down from Montreal. The boy was like Italian gangster type thing with the black hat and cigar and sunglasses, little briefcase and that. But after the first year, Captain Lou took sort of about the contract, type thing, because Tony Angelo wanted to go back home. And the only other guys in the office back then, I was just trying to remember, Phil Zacco, the old-timer, Savoli, he was up there towards the door.
Willie Gilsenberg, was he there then? Or?
He more in the background, He wasn't up front as much as Phil. And
my dad...
Savoli, he was up north. He was around the Portland, Oregon area, and his son still runs that area up there, I guess, Independence,
Was old Arnie Skoland around in those days, too? Or?
Oh, yeah. He was managing Bruno back then in those days, and still part of the office, I think, him and Gorilla Monsoon, helping out in the office.
It's funny, my dad started old Gorilla Gino up here in about 59. He was a big amateur wrestler type. He wrestled his name under the name of Bob Morella, and he was kind of a big nearsighted. He had real thick glasses, Gino, but tough big bastard. Yeah. He had been national amateur champion or something like that. And my dad told me he had him down in the dungeon a few times. He said he was virtually impossible to move because he was so damn big, and he knew how to displace his weight and all like that. So my dad told me he was a fairly tough big bastard, old Gino, and a pretty wild-mannered big guy. But there was another couple of guys that I remember my dad sent down there. They may have been around that stretch. Was a guy named Newton Tatry and Joe Perusevich, and they became the Mongols, Guido and Bipo Mongol.
They came into Montreal, matter of fact. Yeah, but myself and Hans Schmidt wrestled them when they first came in, and it was like a heel match, heel against heels. And Joe tells his story to this day. He said he didn't know who these guys were, like Hans Schmidt. They hadn't heard that name, but Ivan Koloff, this Russian guy, because he could speak Russian, Joe. And matter of fact, he was out there for your dad for a while there too, And he told me the story later on how he escaped from overseas because of the they're trying to kill him over there. Trying to run out. It just came up for the Summer Olympics or something, and he was a power lifter or something. Big Joe. Yeah. He ended up coming in there. Him and Newt Tatrick as the Mongols. And remember how Hans Schmidt used to bend the guys over, kick them so hard with that big boot? And then I got in on it. So you show me, kid, how hard you can kick them. And I tried to do the same thing. Big Joe was trying to talk to me in Russian, I guess. And he was trying to tell me, don't listen to this guy, and all this stuff. But I couldn't understand what he was saying. I was going, God to the wrong things. And Joe finally caught on, and he said, in Russian to me, he said, I guess you're just stupid, right? And I said, no. And he knew then I didn't understand what they're talking about. But he said, I'll never forget that match because you guys are kicking us hard, and we're supposed to be just coming in, and you guys are beating us up.
Yeah, I think my dad had him up here for a few years. I think my dad did stretch old Joe a few times. But he was a strong big bastard then, as my dad told me. I think his name was Perusevich or something. But
he wrestled under his own name at that time when he was in the Stampede territory. And, he was a very, very well-built, large lad.
He was sort of a Svengali to those guys, I think Bill Eadie also, if I'm not mistaken, got originally broke in as one of the Mongols too, or whatever, later to become the Masked Superstar and Action Smash and all like that,
Oh, he's great. To this day, he still wrestles. Yeah, I had seen him just a couple weeks ago, and he was at a match, and still moves around good and everything. He's a teacher. I said to him, Bill, what classes do you teach? What grade that? What subject? And he saw all of them. I said, what do you mean all of them? He said, I treat like a special school where the people, the kids that's in there are challenged. And he ended up saying, I teach from grade 1 right up through high school. And all different subjects, from physical education to math and history. So I said, man, that's unique for a guy to, have that kind of education to be able to not only to deal with challenged kids, but on top of it to teach all subjects. It's pretty sharp of him, and still do some wrestling on the side. He's getting up there a little bit too now, as far as his age and everything. But he's still going out there doing it. Barbarian's still out there too. And I keep thinking these names you mentioned, some fond memories of the different guys, and what they're doing today. Like Big Joe is, Bruce, like you're saying, is Nikolai Volkov. Of course, later on, he's one of these house inspectors up in New Jersey. He's been doing that.
Is that right?
Yeah, he's done a good job. And, yeah, I can't imagine him doing it, but he's good at it. So.
You ever cross paths, Ivan, with old Khosrow, Iron Sheik?
I ended up wrestling against him and his tag team with him, and we got along. This one thing in the plane when I wrestled Bob Backlund over in the Middle East, we're on the tour together, and I got into my vodka and on the way over there, and ended up fighting with on the plane of all things. And it's a wonder we landed in Jordan before Kuwait. It's a wonder they didn't, because they ended up coming on the plane with machine guns and military, and the whole thing. It's a wonder they weren't arrested for terrorism, because they ended up, fighting on the plane, and even after, like, not being wise enough to keep my mouth shut, we carried it on into the airport and everything, but I got away with it anyway. Mr. Fuji was our spokesperson, so he was about like my attorney, I guess, and thank God he did a good job getting me out of that. So we get along after that. Khosrow Fazari's, we went out to wrestle against each other and partners and everything, so I guess he forgave me for being a little drunk there.
He doesn't have any involvement in the business anymore, old Khosrow, does he? Or is he? It's been I haven't seen him in at least 10 years.
Yeah, just lately, a lot of us guys like Nick Mockwinkle, the Sheik, myself, I'm sure a lot of other guys. A lot of guys that did the jump off the top rope really messed up their ankles, and they get that big ankle, especially on the left leg from landing. And mine's that way right now, like about 3 times its size, the big spurs in it. Khosrow just had his operation here a couple of years ago and got his done up. That's the last time I seen him at one of the fan fests down here. I heard Nick Bachman got his done too. I hope he did anyway, because I know his is bad also. But a lot of these guys just I bring back such memories from the different territories. Like I went from being a wrestler, even during that time, I guess, in different situations. I was a referee, like in the bars, against when a couple of the boys would get in a fight with each other over a girl or whatever. I've refereed a couple of those matches, and matches in the dressing room. I don't know why I ended up being a referee. Nobody even said anything. I just started refereeing, like the boys would be just starting to do dirty. They're going for pull an eyeball out or bite them or something like that. I said, I don't know, go biting, and hit their hand, knocking away, and stuff like that. They'd listen to me. That's the craziest part. And here they are trying to bust each other open, and they'd be listening to me, and I'd tell them, no groin now, no hair pulling, other stuff. That's kind of crazy. But, when you got guys like Wahoo McDaniel and Jardine, they're fighting in the dressing room one day, and they're mad at each other. I refereed that match, and one I didn't get killed there. The other one was, I think, Brian Blair against the guy that wrestled was Joint the Clown, Matt Bourne. Oh, man. There's a bar, they got, I guess, fighting over the same girl that went outside. I ended up being the referee for that match, too. But I'm glad I did, because they could have ended up hurting each other or something, I guess I let them run the steam off, and then I backed off. But I was appreciative of the fact that some guys did the same thing with me. Whatever, I shoot my mouth off, get drunk, or during those crazy years of getting in fights. But that all ended up all right.
After you left New York, you had a pretty long successful run in the Mid-Atlantic and Georgia and Florida. Those were pretty good territories back in those days. Those are a lot of guys couldn't even crack the roster. And who was in there back in those days? Old Johnny Weaver and Johnny Walker and trying to remember who was the Flair may have been just getting his feet wet around that time, I guess.
I ended up being very fortunate because right after I left in New York in '71, I had a trip to Japan. Altogether, I had 12 tours to Japan over my career, but I ended up going to the Minnesota area with Vern up there for 2.5 years. Of course, all these guys were there then, the Blackjacks, the Wahoo, Superstar Billy Graham, Buddy Robinson, of course, Loser. All those guys are right there. In '74, after I met George Scott, that was the booker for the Crockett's, he came up there and was scouting for guys, and it seemed like all the boys that was up there for Vern ended up over the next year leaving and coming down to the Charlotte area. I know I was one of the guys that came down. Pretty soon the Blackjacks, Wahoo was there, and of course the standard guys that was there, like Sweet Handsome, Rip Hawk, like you said, Johnny Weaver, guys like that, Nelson Royal.
Those some pretty legendary old workers then.
Great guys working. I got to wrestle guys like that.
I was always intrigued. Was Vern working with Crockett in those days, or it's like a hell of a lot of guys came from Minneapolis and became big stars in Carolina, but I never ever knew that Vern was on great terms with Crockett, or they never seemed to cross-promote or anything. So I was always intrigued as like guys like Flair and Steamboat and some of the biggest stars in Carolina seemed to come from Minneapolis, but I didn't know that was by accident or...
George Scott went up there. He was a designated booker for the Crockett's at that time. The old man had just passed, Jim Crockett, and Junior took over, Crockett Jr., and he sent George up there, I guess, to see you after they're done up there, I'd come down here type thing, and George would come up. And I remember wrestling against him up in Minnesota, and not knowing that he was like a booker up here, but he wanted to see if I knew anything, I guess, in the ring. I guess he was impressed enough to ask me to come here, so that was great there. But yeah, we had some great talent, young guys just starting out, Jay, Youngblood, and Ricky Steamboat, of course.
Magnum TA, was he in there too then, Terry Allen? Or?
Yep. He started right around that time, I think. Got moved in a little later on, not 74, a little later on than that. And I remember him showing up, and they had big plans for a guy like him because he had a lot of potential, was
old Johnny Ballantyne in there then, or?
Yeah, Johnny was here. Yep. Matter of fact, that was '75. He had the plane wreck and broke his back.
Were you in that? Were you in the territory when that happened, or was that?
Luckily I was in the. They had A, B, and C team type of thing. I was on one of the other towns that particular day, and I was glad it was because, a few of the guys got their backs really, including Flair, got his back hurt too. But his was, I guess he recovered enough to have a career anyway, but Johnny was paralyzed after that. He was a booker for a while there, Johnny, but Florida and round, but this was a little bit too much for him. But some great talent was around at that time. The Bonzel,
I know a bunch of those. I know when I was a kid, Ivan, a bunch of those guys were either breaking in or getting their feet wet in Calgary, including Valentine and George Scott and Johnny Weaver, Johnny Walker, Gorilla, all those guys. I remember them when I was a kid, but they quite a pronounced flavor from Canada down in Carolina there with yourself and George Scott and some of those guys. A lot of people maybe didn't realize that they were where they came from. But it was quite a few Canadians had a pretty good impact on American territories back in those days.
Oh yeah, I remember guys like Love Brothers, Adrian Adonis. Oh man, there's a lot of George Momberg and some old
Oh yeah, Killer Carl Troop and Hans Schmidt and Vachon and a lot of people don't even realize they were Canadians. They were proceeding to be Russians. Or Waldo von Erich was another one, who was out of Ontario. They had him as a German, and it was quite a few. An old Gene as well, and Killer Kowalski too. There's a pretty good Canadian flavor down there that I don't think they realized that they were all Canadians. They were Canadians.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Killer Kowalski ended up tagging up with Big John Studd there for a while with the masks on. I forget what their name was now, but
was he a Canadian? I know he was one of Kowalski's proteges. I was told he had that Chuck O'Connor's or whatever his name was. They had him working in Montreal back in it had been early 70s there with I wasn't sure if it was Grand Prix or Jack Britton's and or Rougeau. I never knew who, but I remember him. He's a lot thinner then. He became a lot bigger later, old John. But I remember old Kowalski had a pretty good run in Calgary back in the early 60s. He and Gene were Kiniski were kind of the main two heels for my dad, and Kowalski was always, I think he's the guy who sent Tatry up later on, and he's always sending my dad a few of his proteges or whatever. So
as far as the kids, Stu's kids, you the middle child, or I'm trying to remember, that old Brett was older, right?
Yeah, I'm one of the older ones. There's a dozen. You probably saw us all when we were snot-nosed punks or whatever.
Chris Gilman, I think he's on the air, and he wanted to talk to Ivan for a few minutes. Oh, Chris, are you there?
Yeah. I am here. Being the guy that basically transcended the eras going into the 70s, defeating Bruno Sammartino for the title, and working a lot of those names going into later on your career, working with guys like Magnum TA and Dusty and Rock and Roll Express. What would be some of your fondest memories about working the Southern Territories?
Oh, man. All of them are fond memories because of the guys that ended up working with, I think, like the Rock and Roll Express. I mean, after a while, when you're in there 90 minutes, 60-minute matches, and night after night, after a while, it's like you either become somewhat of a friendship or a hatred or something that you're going to end up either getting along or always being at each other's throats. So it was always easier to try to get along, I guess. It just seemed like all of these guys from the Rock and Roll, the Road Warriors, I mean, you just name it, whether it's Magnum TA, Dusty Rhodes, and single matches, it just ended up, I think, really just mutual respect for each other, I guess. I often tell people that, man, the fans would say stuff like, I seen one time Ric Flair wrestling against so-and-so, and then I seen him later in the bar. I said, so what's so odd about that? I mean, if you seen George Foreman and Muhammad Ali and having dinner together after a big fight, I mean, what would you think? Maybe they respected each other enough to want to have a meal together. I mean, what's wrong with that? But people always think that was so, or like they really found out something really incredible. But all of these guys are just fond memories of. It just seemed like you just got along with them because of necessity. But when you got in there and you realized that they're good at what they did, you really appreciated the fact that they're that good, so that you didn't have to kill yourself. Because a lot of times, the guy is not trained right, and you get in there and you're doing some certain moves with them, and you end up, if they're not trained right, they jump you on your head or something, or suplex you on the back of your head or something, because they weren't really trained right. But I always I never had that situation with the pros with out there in the college. So you can appreciate the fact that out of mutual respect we tried to do our job the best way we could, and I think from that it ends up just getting along, But a few times in the ring I had to really scramble to get my way type thing. Whenever you wrestle some guys and they're really a prima donna, you might say, like just really out to make themselves look good. There was a few guys like that. I understood it because they're, I guess, never really allowed to be pushed all the way. I've ever had to really fight for position with a couple guys. If I could mention a couple of names like Edward Carpentier, and I really respected and loved the guy, because I watched him as a teenager, as I was getting into the business. And later on, they got to wrestle him, and they're very aggressive in the ring, great shape. Bill Mascaris, another one, and Billy Robbins, you had to respect. It's a lot of these guys, Danny Hodges, guys like that they're great amateurs, and they're good wrestlers, and that they really you're really put to a test. But overall, man, I never really had bad time with anyone that I could put my mind to right there now. That in the ring, we just always got along good. And, man, it was quite an experience because a lot of you came back, and it's how good you did with them the first time, whether the judges another time get to wrestle them, because if they got some say with the promotion in the new area you're coming into, and if they didn't like the way you wrestled with them before, like you take a guy like Dusty Rhodes or something, he's not going to put in a good word for you to, bring that guy in, he's great. And I got to have the privilege of way back then traveling from different places. They flying me to St. Louis, to Indianapolis, to Miami, Florida, to back to Charlotte here, and New York, and all over. So they even started doing that when I was in Montreal. So to me, that shows that the promoters see something in you, and I guess not only your ability to wrestle, but get along with other guys, and that's quite complimentary to say the least. But I must say, quite a journey for me. I really enjoyed it all the way. Still enjoyed it. I always tried to get along with the fans because, in the early part of my career, it was like the promoters always say, don't be signing autographs, especially if you're the bad guy, they looked at not being able to get out there and sign autographs and talk to the fans and all that. And so it was a treat whenever it got to the point where I could, go up and do autographs or, be able to sign. I remember one quick story. This gentleman from the Captain Center in D.C. ended up as a young man being there with his dad and wanted my autograph. And when I came back to the ring, I guess I stepped behind the curtain and ended up signing on it. He remembered so much and was so thankful for it. I met him about 15 years ago here in the area where I live. And he goes to me on the street, and he went telling me the story that he had met me before, and he was a dentist. It turns out that he insisted that I come down to his office and he'd take care of my teeth. So that worked out real good.
Yeah, Ivan, do you ever get back to this part of the country in British Columbia? I understand you still have family here.
Yes, I have a son that's Chilliwack area. Let me see, I got a brother, he's more in Edmonton, a couple brothers in the Edmonton area and in Calgary. Let me see, a lot of cousins, nephews, and that, all through there. I got a sister in the Edmonton area. Let me see now, another sister in out near Chilliwack also. Like my son is out there. Just quite a few relatives now. Probably more nephews and nieces and that I even know about. But, I don't get a chance to go there very much anymore.
Whatever happened to your brother Jerry? Ivan, the guy who came out with Dale Hay or Buddy Roberts back in the day.
He's in Red Deer, Alberta today. Has a house out there. He has a trucking business for years, but he's retired now. But yeah, Jerry and Judy, his wife, is there. There's Red Deer.
He's a little smaller than Dale Hay or Buddy Roberts, and then they were sort of tag teaming a bit up here, and then I never knew whether he ever did start a wrestling career or what. I kind of lost track of him after that, but seemed like a nice kid. I'm glad to hear he still around and still doing well. Then at that time, I remember Dale Hay. He was a lot bigger. He was a pretty muscular kid back at that time. I think my dad had him working out at. My dad had a beach out here, and I think my dad had him out being a lifeguard and doing a few other chores in return for training him or breaking him in or whatever. And
yeah. Let me tell you a quick story about your dad and Buddy. You might have heard it before, but I don't know because there wasn't a lot of people there. Myself and Buddy, how your dad liked to go down and show the boys some stuff, because he.
Stretch him a bit.
Yeah, let me get in there. Anyway, this is a true story. But Buddy was, like you say, pretty stocky. He was doing over $400 on the bench and 500 squats.
He was a strong kid then, Dale. Buddy.
Yeah. And your dad really took a liking to him, I guess, because he was working out hard and impressive. Matter of fact, he stayed there at your house there for a while. Your dad let him stay down and sit down in the basement there for a while.
Oh yeah, his bed was the mat there.
Yeah, and then for one day I remember I was in there and I had already smartened Buddy up. I said, "Now Stu asked you put a hold on you. You know that he's going to try to tighten up a little bit and get you a screaming bit. So you better make sure when you get you the hold that you got a counter or something." And he did. Dad wanted to show him his hold, and he got him in a chin lock from behind, or chin lock type thing. And you can hold a pretty strong man with that. But I guess I all figured out what he's going to do already. And he bent forward, picked your dad up, and he ran him back in the wall. Boom! And I remember your dad letting go and saying, "Yeah, you're strong, yeah." I can't do your dad's right, but man, that was funny because he really liked the idea that Buddy had accounted for it and knocked him up and got him to break it by backing him up into the wall, But I never forget that. I laughed myself. I said, "I better not laugh too much, or Stu will get me." But that was good.
The strong bastard.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember a lot of good trips going in the big old limousine, Winnipeg, back home, Stan Stasiak. I took my bag out the back, and it was a bag the first bag that I ever got, and it was I had it's cardboard from Salvation Army, and I set it down. We're all drinking, got out. Stan Stasiak stepped out of the limousine and stepped right on my bag. I guess you can see it there, and foot went right through it. It was no big deal, but I had to patch it up, until I could get another one. Big dude, I'd be coming to the matches with this patched up suitcase. I had to take a bus to get to the TV station and all that. So, boys used to tell me about that and laugh about it. But that was great.
Well, these are really excellent stories. I have a couple of guys on. I got a guy calling from the Northwest Territories of all places in Canada. And then there's another friend of ours calling from Chicago, Bob Brooks. So I'll put the first chap on. Ross, are you on the line? Ross Learn.
No, you must have got tired waiting.
Yes, he dropped. Okay, I've got Bob Brooks from Chicago.
I got to tell you, that voice sure sounds like a guy I used to know called Red McNulty. You know that?
Right. Yeah, it sure would be.
The last time I saw him was at CAC in the gift shop. He was on my show also, Classic Professional Wrestling, while I was overseas.
a
couple things I didn't get to ask you before when you were over on my show there. You wrestled, like you say, for 52 years, but what about as far as any managers? Did you feel, well, maybe you could name a few managers that you had, but could you tell me, and all the fans out there that are listening in, did you have a manager see it as an advantage, disadvantage, because it was somebody that was kind of getting in your way, or did you, or just, it was just part of the job that night?
Yeah, I always thought, especially at the beginning of my career, that was quite an asset, because, and I taught Nikita that, or tried to convey that when Nikita came along, because that's the way I was brought in, like, the transition from Red McNulty to Ivan Koloff was, don't say nothing. That the mysterious type of, like the people just not hear you talk at first, just when you're mean and they can't figure you out. Like you just went there, destroy the guys and get up there and look menacing, and that way they can get into your character more. And when you do start speaking, it's just a little bit of time, and I guess the intrigue gets the people, ready for it over the months and years or whatever. And I always looked at it as an asset. Of course, I never figured it interfered with the amount of money I made as far as any of my money, going to them, because it was a separate deal, like, type of thing. So I never thought it was something that would help me. I always looked at it as a good thing. So I always went along with it. Seemed to work out good for me. I always got along with the different guys I had as managers, from Gary Hart, to Captain Lou Albana, to Tony Angelo, and Freddie Blassie. I had so many different guys that were like manager, even Paul Jones for a while as a type of manager thing, and guys in Japan and all this stuff. So it was great, to have that extra camaraderie, I guess, for the business, and also, especially in another country, to have somebody to hang out with,
Right. Well, one of the other things I wanted to kind of target with you was, as far as geographically, in the U.S., okay? Back then, I think Terry Funk told us one time, there was 32, different promotions that, back in the, the 60s and 70s period. As far as you were concerned, and I know you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or anything, but I'm just saying, when you were in my area in Chicago, and Dick the Bruiser's area over WWA, did you see that as more beneficial to yourself as far as whether getting paid, the type of talent, versus, let's say, the Mid-Atlantic area? And I know you had guys like Don Leo Jonathan and some of the guys like that over there in the Mid-Atlantic, and I know you mentioned Paul Jones, but did you see some areas being a little bit better, like coming in when you got Bob Luce and Dick the Bruiser and names like that to work with, versus going to some other area that you just weren't very comfortable in?
Yeah, it all depended on whether it was on fire or not, the territory at the time that you go in, or during the time you're there. If it really catches on, and you got paid according to the houses. So if the houses are full, you get more money, of course. That's why you like the big cities, because you got usually more money at the big coliseums, bigger cities, because they're usually full. So the Chicagos and the Minneapolis and guys, places like Indianapolis and that of course you waited for those. That's why, like New York, because you a lot of big cities up there. Of course, you make you transition around in a month's period of time. You go to 15 different large cities. You're going to get paid a lot more than you would for a little smaller town. But a couple of my best years, I was the thing with the champion up there in WWE, now you call it, was right down here in the Mid-Atlantic area, because those years with Nikita and right around that time right there, matter of fact, and that was later on, of course, so I guess the money was more, it seemed like, back in the 60s and 70s than it was the 80s and 90s, maybe, you know, like you couldn't really compare it. But I remember having a couple of my best years right around that time against the Rock and Roll Express, the Road Warriors, and Nikita's transition up in the year. So, but a lot of the territories. That's why I moved around a lot. Like I guess Harley was saying, he was right. The idea of the different territories having their big towns. Florida had theirs, and Atlanta had theirs, and you know, that's why I just keep punching it around. Like every year and a half, 2 years, it changed territory, so it'd be fresh in each area, so you could want to skim the gravy off the top. You'd look at it that way, and be on to the next one, you know. But that's the way I looked at it anyway. And maybe it wasn't as good as some guys had it because they homesteaded, I guess, and like the Paul Jones in just one area, like the Crockett's in Mid-Atlantic, and maybe Jay Strongbow up in New York, or Mr. Wrestling too in the Georgia area, Dusty Rhodes down in Florida, or the Briscoes, and same up in New York, you know, Bruno up there, or whoever it may be. But hey, if you're really over strong and you're the main draw in that area, you want to stay there as long as you can, no matter where you're at, if you're getting the main event, you know, in each of those big cities. So I couldn't pick one and say I'd like to be there better than the other. It was really on fire, the territory. You know, as far as the money goes, you got to be where the money's at, of course. But I found there's good talent all over. You know, you got to wrestle with. Not too many guys that put up with me. So go ahead.
Well, you know, and fellas, jump in any time here. I don't want to hog all the questions or take up Ivan's time here. But I just wanted to ask you, you know, when you and I talked, you know, in the past, and I met you over at CAC, you always seem to have a real positive attitude about yourself and about the career that you had. And I don't want to, you know, flip the coin, but I want to just for a minute, okay? If you had to pick a negative time, Ivan, out of all the, you know, cards that you were on, and maybe especially back, maybe let's say in the earlier days, did you ever run into any trouble in, let's say, in some of the, you know, in the locker room where somebody said, you know what, I'm can outlift you, I can do this, I can do that, you know, and somebody that I don't want to say necessarily tried you, but did you ever get anybody that kind of really pushed your buttons or wanted to, maybe take a shot at you in the locker room or anything?
Maybe they did, but they didn't express it, I guess, that way. Probably a few times where I was maybe, you know, a little bit tired or a little bit buzzing too much or something because of the scheduling and the different stuff we ended up taking, you know, over the years from injuries to, you know, being sleepy, and we ended up getting involved in the drugs and all that, and so might end up being a little ignorant or do something stupid and get them a little upset with you. Yeah, that happened probably a couple times that I can remember out, but I think they realized it like I realized it. You know, it was under the influence at the time, so don't make a big deal of it. Don't be serious. And don't make it a thing that's going to bother you the rest of your life or the rest of your friendship with that person. So I can't say that I had that situation with Cosmo Pizzeri on the plane of the Middle East.
Right, I recall that story there. You told me that.
The one time with Bob, I think it was Ramstead, I think, in Japan, where I did the arm wrestling thing. I went to arm wrestling. I was drunk, and I think after the second time he put me down, Matt Doug-Vachon told me that I said to him, okay, one more time, you put me down this time, I'm going to punch you in the nose. He said he put me down, I punched him in the nose. All I know is the next thing I do is get up next morning and they handed us a bill. All the boys had to each pay $300, so nobody was my friend the rest of the tour. Everybody was mad at me because I was responsible for tearing up the bar, I guess, and causing all this damage. And I don't even remember it, so I guess I was crazy because they ended up, I guess, saying I was fighting with them, and I don't even remember. So, could have been much more fighter.
That's a good thing, I guess. Then it didn't like you say, you can't let it affect you the rest of your career, or you just have to turn your face and move on, and just say, hey, yesterday was a bad day, and today will be a better day.
That's right. Yeah, you had to look at it that way, because as a norm, I wasn't that way, and people weren't that way with me. I mean, I'm sure there was some things said at some time where the guy maybe did like what I did, or said in the ring, or something like that. Maybe tried to insult me in the dressing room, but if he did do it, he did it in such a way that I didn't take it that serious, because I wasn't one to back down, but I wasn't one to look for a fight, and like that. It wasn't a big off that I know of, unless I was really intoxicated or under the drugs.
I've got a guy calling in here from the Northwest Territories of Canada, who met Ivan at the Cauliflower Alley Club a couple of years ago. Ross, are you there?
I am here finally.
Yeah, sorry.
We all share one phone line up here, so.
You're calling from where? In Equality in the Northwest Territories?
Yeah, in Iqaluit, actually Nunavut. Nunavut. Straight north of where Ivan was born.
Okay, I'll let you guys go for it.
You've wrestled all over the world. What would you say what area would you say is the most fun to wrestle in? Which part of the world?
I really didn't have a great preference, for any particular area. I guess some were probably, I wasn't at home, type of thing. So they get a little lonely if you took a long trip to Japan, like you're gone 10 weeks or something like that, like the trip to Australia. But still then, I enjoyed every one of the tours I did to Japan, because the Japanese people are so nice, they come across to you so nice and polite, and I guess kind to you, they try to be real nice out of their way. And to me, I found that pretty appealing to, because I went over there so many trips. But Australia was one place I really enjoyed going to. Fiji Islands, Australia, New Zealand, and all that, and seeing that back in 1970. I'd love to go back there again, of course. And the places like over in Europe and that, I had a chance to go through Italy, Greece, and France and England, but I'd like to have more time to spend over there. The Middle East, of course, Kuwait. I don't know if I'd want to be there among what's going on today with some of those countries, but maybe too much action. But I did enjoy being in Kuwait and that, because we were over there entertaining a lot of troops at the time, and the people seemed to treat us real nice, and so I enjoyed that. But I guess if I was to say one particular place, would be Australia, because I only went there with a one tour, and I really was fond of it, because it was still behind the United States a bit as far as refrigerators and all of that, but they had ice boxes back then when we had refrigerators here. But it was still, you went out, got your meat and everything at the shop, butcher shop for that day, and cooked it up. Whereas here in the States, you kept it in a ice box or in the refrigerator, But so that was unique, and but I enjoyed so much the country, Bondi Beach and everything over there in Australia, and especially when you lived next door to King Curtis, and he loved his wine every day, and have that delivered to the door, and I had to help him go over there and help him, have a few sweets as a taster, to make sure it was good enough for him to drink. But yeah, I don't know. I think
and in Japan, you guys are like royalty over there.
Yeah, it really was, because they end up get the hotel for us, transportation was all taken care of. All you had to do is, listen to the guide, take us here, there, and check in, go to wrestle. It was like that was your time for entertainment, really, because you could go out there and you'd be entertaining the people doing the work, but it was like you're entertained at the same time too, because they react different over there. The fans, when they appreciate something, even if you're beating somebody up, they clap and cheer for you. Even if you think they'd be booing you or something.
Oh, I know Japanese love their wrestling.
Yeah, they really did. So I enjoyed that, watching going to sumo matches too. That was a different type of wrestling, but I enjoyed that. But, yeah, any of the places in the States, you know, when you go down south, great, especially in the wintertime, go down south, preferably, you know, but because of the weather. But I enjoyed all wrestling throughout Canada and the States, every place I went. But I guess I'm a little leading a little bit more to seeing more countries over there in Europe and that, going back, taking my wife to that. She's loves Italian food, so I'd love to be able to take her to Italy and Greece and that over there, because I really enjoyed the food. And at Australia, of course, the sightseeing and all that stuff, beautiful over there.
Did you find when you were wrestling in Europe and Japan that you had to change your style from the way you wrestled in North America? Is there a big difference in the way the locals wrestle in those countries?
Of course, it's rounds over in Europe, but I mean, I didn't do a lot there. It was we were in Kuwait, and we did it just American style there, because it was mostly guys from America, whether they're different countries. They're all used to the American style of wrestling. But whenever I went to, like Japan, for example, you did the same type of moves, but Japan, they pride themselves on being in great shape, the Japanese, and they like to mix it up, like whether it's a little bit of what they're doing today on TV with the WWE, like a lot of kicks and a lot of karate stuff and stuff like that. They're not afraid to use it. Very aggressive player. So you had to be aggressive over there. Then the style changed here in America. Also went from more mat wrestling, getting down there, trying to make them give up and work a hold, trying to wear them down and make them submit or something, to more aerial stuff. I don't know if they did that, change it more because of the TV and more action that way or what, but I did notice that over the years. But for myself, I enjoyed the fast pace after I lost some weight, put it that way. But before that, I had some matches that were long matches, and I was still up there around the 250, 260 mark, and you huff and puff more when it's a 60-minute, 90-minute match than you do if you're down there at 220. I know that.
Any of those old guys still down in Carolina area? Still, do you ever cross paths with any of the Ricky Mortons and Gibsons and some of the Tennessee guys? Or
oh yeah, quite often, but actually, because I still attend some shows, the appearances, mostly with the independents things. And last night I was in one here, just up the road, Williamston, North Carolina. We did it in conjunction with the church, where we put on wrestling match at George South. Let me see, the Ricky Morton was there. I think Barbarian was supposed to be there, and Bobby Fulton was one of the Fantastics was there.
Oh yeah,
we had quite a few of the talent there. Some good wrestling, and we had put some real good matches. Even had a cage match, and it was a storm outside on top of it, but the place was full, so they wanted to see it, I guess, to the people. So that was good. But I really enjoyed going to the shows and then seeing some of the old guys. See Bill Eadie quite often, Master Talk, Barbarian.
Oh yeah, how is Bill Eadie doing these days?
He's doing great. He's doing great. Looks great. And
where's he? Yeah, a very nice guy. Good, real decent guy, Bill Eadie.
Yeah. Real good talent. Good work and everything. Yeah, I just want to tell the fans out there, if I have a moment, just to check out my daughter and son-in-law's page. It's Highway Revival. They're gospel singers, and they're very good. She looks just like me, or what I used to look like. You know, the long curly hair, the great voice. She's got it now. I don't have it anymore, but she's real good, though. They're very good. The whole group, highwayrevival.com. You go to that. Of course, check out my site, IvanKoloff.com. I got my pictures on there, my book on there. Scott Teal wrote, Is That Wrestling Fake? The Bare Facts with Ivan Koloff. And I think I'll give my autobiography in there. And anybody wants to get a picture in, it helps my ministry. And whether you get it for that or designate it what you want it for, I do children's miracle autographs a lot too around the country for the last 22 years. So that'd be a help too. We'll have this documentary on our site also whenever it comes out here with Michael. I know he's done a great job with it and he's still working on it, but we'll be out by the end of the year, beginning of next year. I know Michael will have some of them on his site also, but anytime you need my book and I don't have it, I got some right there now order it on from me on the computer or through my website, ivankoloff.com, or get it from crowbarpress.com. That's Scott Teal's site. He's got them there. I enjoy your play. I appreciate this. And my ministry today is going good. I appreciate weddings in this area, ordained, and of course, they make appearances, so anybody wants me to appear for their business or have me come in to do autographs or speak at a church or use me to officiate the wedding, I'd be glad to do it.
Do you ever interact with DiBiase and Tully? I know they were doing some of that stuff, you know.
Yes, it's Ted DiBiase's concept of what we're doing with the wrestling now and turning it into church. You know, he came up with that idea, and I guess an offswing of another Christian group that ended up bending bars and breaking ice and all that stuff. We give wrestling instead, and a couple of testimonies of guys like myself and what's happened where, you know, because been there, done that, you know, the drugs and alcohol, not proud of it, but the fact that the Lord is, God is so good that you end up having that patience and love for us that he ended up paying the price for us, and now we have a chance to be able to overcome this stuff if we just believe and turn ourselves over and allow the Lord to work in our lives. We end up, I know it's a fact that you can do it because I did it just by turning my life over to the Lord and getting into his word and just creates more faith in you that you're able to overcome these things. And you got a great tag team partner in the Lord. You can't go wrong. So,
yeah, I think that would be a great initiative, you know, more so than ever these days. You know, they've had way too many guys, unfortunately, become casualties of drugs and all the other stuff, you know, and I'm not sure if the message has got out to them yet.
So sad to hear whenever, you know, your friends like that are dying so young and, you know, but I can understand. It's only by the grace of God that didn't happen to me because I can remember distinctly car accidents that the car was totaled and I came out of it with just a few scratches and a few bruises. I mean, I'm still suffering with some of the bruises to my back and stuff right this day, but it's just the fact that God wanted me around and he's a good God, man. It's hard not to love back, you know, send the love back to him. Yeah, my wife let me, she takes care of my business part of it, the computer and everything. It takes a lot of sense. I turned that over to her. She was just telling me that we do have a Twitter account also. So, you know, a couple of Facebook accounts and all that good stuff. So any fans want to keep in touch, that'd be great. You come on board. I really enjoy life. I'm more excited today, and that's saying a lot. As excited as I was about getting into wrestling and being a wrestler and having that dream come true now, just doing the kingdom's work for the Lord, it's to me more exciting, especially when you got family, a good wife like mine, and a daughter and son-in-law that are really going out there and working it, you know, and just on fire for the Lord. It just makes me that much more enthused to see their kids, my grandkids, growing up with, you know, some direction. You know, I ended up going down to the juvenile detention here for 10 years until they stop allowing to have to change the rules about having 10 commandments in schools and everything, and they keep changing these rules, and that's where we start getting all these troubles. But it just seems like they didn't want us to do that anymore, go in there, because I guess we're trying to keep the kids too clean. They want them to get into trouble or something. I don't know, but I was going down there, and I think I was reaching a lot of the kids because I had them come up to me now 4 years later, 10 years later, and they're saying, meet me on the street, and they're saying, hey, I have a Koloff. Remember you talked to me when I was in the detention center? I don't remember meeting them, but, man, it's good to hear that you're out and how things going and tell me what an impact it had on them and all this. Man, makes you feel good just to know that you're reaching some of these people, but it would never do if I hadn't experienced what I went through, and the Lord allowed me to live to. It's just good to be alive today and having this challenge to go out there and try to get people to the realization that drugs and alcohol will never make you happy. It's just the way God made us. We just got to have Him in our life, and the sooner we do that, the happier we'll be. So maybe somebody out there is hearing this. I hope so.
I'm hoping the WWE maybe hears that message, because you'd be a great spokesperson, getting that message across. There's a huge audience out there that needs to hear that. So many wrestlers have kind of gone down the wrong road and have paid the price for it. So it's been a real pleasure for me and an honor. Since I was a little kid, I had heard about Ivan, and I'd heard so many people talk of him. I'd never heard anyone ever say a bad word about him, and he certainly more than lived up to that. Real class act and the real deal. So I'm honored that he chose to come on the show, and it was great hearing from you, Ivan, and keep up the good work. You're an inspiration to a whole generation, so I'm really happy that you saw fit to grace the show with your presence. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You guys have been great, and I appreciate each and every one of the fans out there over the years, and get the chance to reach out to you right there now. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, brother.
Good night to all the fans out there, and thank you, Bob. You did a great job.
I want a big shout-out here to my friend Mike McCurdy for helping me at the beginning.
No problem, Bob. I'll do it for you anytime, man. I'm still here.
All our fans, good night. See you next week.